Because you're a member of Building Workers Know Your Rights campaign, and you were talking to me the other day about building workers in general and the ageing demographic of building workers. Could you tell me a little bit about what's happening in Ireland at the moment?
Well, one of the things that I've noticed is just that people are starting to talk about how we're going to resolve the housing crisis, and everyone's batting out numbers, and nobody's really looked at the massive problem we have with retention and recruitment in construction, in the sense that even the CIF came out last week and basically said, we can't get people to take up, particularly wet trades, which is anything outdoors really. We cannot get the young people to come in, and the problem with that is, in 2017, which is the last set of figures that we have available, it showed that the increase in the average age in construction workers was more or less 7 years, putting it at around about 42.3, I think it was the average age. Now, I would say that that's definitely got a lot worse since 2017. We've had COVID. You've had a number of people heading off, immigrant workers heading back to where they came from, and there's been nothing to replace that. They've incentivised apprenticeships in the sense that employers can get a large lump sum to take on apprentices, but there's nothing there for the apprentice himself. If you look at a first year apprentice gets basically $750 a week, $750 an hour, and you can't survive on $750 an hour, certainly not in today's. And what's the attraction? Why? How are we meant to replace people like myself, who are now coming to the end of my, I'm 51. I'm coming to the end of this now. I can't be expected to carry tiles, to lay a roof for the rest of my life. I mean, or till I'm 67, I'll be dead. And in fact, again, the figures bear that out when you look at the 1 in 5 construction workers 55 years and over working in construction makes it to retirement. So, I mean, it's damning figures. And the reality is, whilst everyone's talking about resolving the housing crisis, nobody's talking about, resolving the crisis with staff.
And Andrew, this is obviously very, very concerning. And Gus mentioned apprenticeships. What would you like to see in terms of apprenticeships?
Yeah, well, there's a lot that has to happen in relation to apprenticeships and the training and the education of the trades. See, you can't just treat the workforce in the construction sector like any other workforce. It's a skill. It's a difficult skill to learn. And if you do an apprenticeship 4 or 5 years, I did 5 years. If you do that, you have to it's hard. You have to kind of cling on. So there has to be more security in relation to apprenticeships. But the key thing is, we've heard like a couple of comments in the Irish Times and stuff like that. We throw an extra couple of euros onto the rate. It's the wrong thing. A couple of euros on the rate makes no difference whatsoever. Firstly, you're talking about anyone who starts an apprenticeship usually now have done their leaving cert, and so they're young adults, right? And you're going to say, well, you can work for less than the minimum wage. Sorry, it's not going to happen. But the key thing that has to happen, in order to make it more attractive, the training and investment has to go in to the individual. There's no point giving money to the employers earn enough profit as it is. No point throwing them money, because nothing will happen, right? Nothing like, in relation to the person who's training. So the centres that provide the training, the further investment to build infrastructure. If you want to expand training, you have to expand the facilities to do the training nationally, not just in one place, say in Dublin or down in Cork. Nationally, the training has to be done. And just like what Gus was saying, with all the trades, including the wet trades. Wet trades aren't attractive. It's hard work, right? And you're not going to do it all your life. And most of the trades, the work you will do is quite hard, quite durable. Even you might say painting and decorating is not all the trades. You're working in an industrial sector. So the thing is, the apprenticeship has to be attractive in relation to the type of education they give. The facilities have to be up to date and modern, right? The syllabus is there. A lot of it's updated. Some of it's not, but it all has to be looked at and updated. And then that all carry through. That when the employer has an apprentice, that the apprentice is deemed to be, up there, say with senior management, that he has to be treated with kid gloves, and it has to be made a lot easier. But as it is now, it's quite difficult to do an apprenticeship, so it's not attractive. But we have a situation where there's a backlog now of all the trades: electrical, plumbing, carpentry and joinery. They're the key trades. But all the other trades, there's a backlog of apprentices who want need to finish because of COVID and so forth. And the weaknesses in the system have been exposed, right? And now we have a situation where guys who've been off during COVID, right, and so decided, no, I'm not going back, I can't go back, don't want to go back. So there's a drop off in the skills. There's a skill shortage, right? But it's got worse now since COVID. And the back end of it, where the skills, the young people come in, is not happening. The conveyor belt is probably only at 10% of what it should be. You think there should be thousands of guys rather than 100 guys learning apprenticeships. So you really have to look at the front end, and we have to look at the whole training structure in relation to skilled trades, and it has to be respected. Because if you find, a guy serving his time, it's not as respected as a guy who does a degree. You have other countries like in Germany, the way they have the system set up. When you work as a Zimmerman or whatever, wow, respect. But we don't have that here. And we seem to respect the developers and voucher funds. We don't respect the guys who are the apprentices who want to learn the trade and contribute, housing to our society. But it's not going to happen until they look at the whole sector.
And Gus, you already said a little bit about the housing crisis there, and obviously we need more housing to be built urgently in this country. And so what would you like to see the state do in terms of housing construction, particularly public housing or social housing?
Well, first and foremost, I think if you want to address retention issues and recruitment issues, the best place to do it is with a public house build direct to the state or the councils. That way you're starting to facilitate people coming into the industry, you're starting to create security, therefore you're starting to change the kind of background that people have to walk onto. If you look at a site now, right, the reality is that when I go on a bigger site now, this is just a house, like, but when you go on a big site, like, it stands out how many young people are on the site. There aren't any. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know anyone who's ever watched Chitty Chitty Bang Bang and the guy going round with catching the children and putting them. That's the way it seems to be on a construction site, because there's none there. It's like some guy has gone round and captured all the young guys coming onto the site and taken them away. The point is, right, that, as I said, I'm getting on in my years now, right, and I can't be expected to do this for much longer unless we address this, right. Then, as I said, there isn't a resolution to the housing crisis because there's nobody there to do it. Yeah, we have to address this now. That's how serious it is. Yeah, if
you don't have the trade, you can't build. And the see things, I remember 7 years ago when I was every time, we were on sites that were called, you're going to boys' school. And we turned up on the site, and it'd be like mostly apprentices doing the work. Yeah. Obviously, you'd have guys who were more senior and whatever, we called Boys Town. But I haven't seen that in years anywhere, But it has to be consistent training. But
it's worth pointing out that, Joe, if you look after the last recession, right, in that boom, there was loads of apprentices. What happened to them all? Where did they all go? They got on a plane and they left. And that's what's going to happen now, because the cost of living and everything in Ireland has gone sky high. There's nothing attractive about it. Our children, like, you ask a tradesman, would he have his children take up the job? No, they wouldn't. They'd have them take up any other job than the job that they're doing now. And again, you have to ask the question, who did this? And I'll tell you who did it. It's quite simple. The CIF ran construction into the ground. It's all about profit. And whilst it's all about profit, we are suffering now. And the truth of the matter is, there isn't that much further to go. When we come out of COVID, if we come out of COVID, or when we come out of I'll guarantee you the second they open flights up to Australia and New Zealand and emigration's back on the cards, and I'm talking about my own kids here, the chances are that, I've got 2 kids, one of them's probably going to go, like, guaranteed, right? Because there's nothing here for them. Like, there's no, and as I said, when you look at construction, everyone's talking about, we need 80,000, we need 100,000 houses to deal with the housing crisis. You aren't going to have them because you don't have the staff. We just don't have them, and guys are not willing to stay for the terms and conditions that are on offer there now. Like in our conversation, we talked about possible solutions. Like, we need to put old heads with young hands, and the only way we can do that is by making it attractive for both, for the young and the old, because the old are just drifting off. It's easier work in a taxi. It's easier work, somewhere else, doing anything else other than this. Imagine carrying blocks at 67 years of age, or tiles, laying a roof at 67 years of age. It is not the place for you to be.
You could drive up onto a site and it's flooded, and it's full of shit, and it's badly managed, and the toilets are in a crap order. Like no other employment. If you worked in the service sector and your canteen was in bits, it was a bit of plywood, or your toilet was a knocked up porta cabin, like you wouldn't accept it. But that's the standard we're at. And you see larger firms who have improved, but it's still not attractive. It's just not attractive. There's a lot has to be done in relation. The construction sector has to be just reformed, and the only way for it to be reformed is the setting up of a state builder who has high standards. Right, it's going to build for society, build our crisis, build our hospitals, build our housing. Right, and the private sector can go off and do what they like. Right, so the only way to reform the private sector is that it has to compete for the skills and the trades from the public sector. Because if somebody says, I can go to a higher standard and work in the public sector, the rates might be slightly lower, right? They may not make as much money, but they have guaranteed tenure and work, and the conditions on site, conditions of employment are top notch. And then, private sector, if you don't match that, then so that's the only way. That it's the carrot and the stick. It's the only way it can be reformed. But we're a long way down the road before that's going to happen, and that's the big problem in relation to the housing crisis.
That's great. Thanks very much, Gus. Thanks, Andrew, for talking.